I didn't come from money. You can get into the real estate investing world no matter what your background is. A lot of people think real estate investing is only for the wealthy, and I think it's to take the middle class, even lower class, to become wealthy. Your dollar literally loses value while it's sitting in a savings account. For me, work the job, don't quit the job. That's the safety net. That is the engine that gives you the capital. In every market in the United States, you can flip and make a lot of money.
All right. Welcome to episode 50 of the Agent to Investor podcast, where we talk about the agent side of real estate investing. We'll be talking about the successes, the failures, and all in between. My name is Nico Garcia, local real estate agent and investor based out of Montgomery County, Maryland. And as always, I'm joined by my co-host,
Anna Bilek, Northern Virginia realtor and mostly out-of-state investor. And Nico, I'm very disappointed. There's no confetti cannons and all of the stuff happening.
Episode 50, and we're super excited. We have another special guest, Jaren, Finance Cowboy. Welcome to the show, brother.
Thank you guys for having me. I'm excited to hang out today. It's going to be a lot of fun. Other than the Washington Nationals shirt you got on, Nico, we'll work through that. Go Braves. But other than that, I'm excited to be here.
That's right. You always got to represent the hometown, right? And again, we are super grateful to have you on. I know we've met a couple of years now, and I've enjoyed learning your story through social media and your content and things like that. But for those of you who are listening that don't know who you are, do you mind giving a quick introduction and what initially got you into real estate?
For sure. So I was raised just a regular dude from South Carolina. My dad's a pastor still to this day. So I just say that because to let people know I didn't come from money, never have come from money. I'm never going to come from money. He's still a pastor. Most pastors don't make a lot of money unless they have a mega church, and we didn't have a mega church. My parents did good. I had a great childhood, but from a money side of things, it wasn't something that we talked about a lot. Just investing wasn't a thing we did, wasn't something we talked about. And so I didn't come from a background of like this being normal to me. And I think that's important for people to understand, because you can get into the real estate investing world no matter what your background is. I think a lot of people think real estate investing is only for the wealthy, and I tend to argue that I think it's to take the middle class, the everyday average person, even lower class, to become wealthy. And that was the story for me. So my life was sports all grown up, go to college, got to play college baseball. It was great. And then I graduated with a ton of debt, $1,000 in student loans, and I had to buy a jacked up truck because I'm from South Carolina. Credit card debt, the whole shebang. So I think I'm 22 or 23 years old, and I got like 110,000 plus in credit card debt. And so really from 2013 to 2018, I talk about this on podcasts a lot, but people want to hear more of my real estate story. So I don't get to talk about this a lot. But for me, this was a very big, maybe traumatic part of my journey. Was for 5 years, my wife and I just paid off debt. Dude. We just paid off bad debt. Now I like good debt. We can talk about that later. But we got ourselves behind the eight ball like so many people do when they're coming out of college or when they're coming out of high school when they're younger. And so there's light at the end of that tunnel. It took us 5 years of living frugally. And so we get out of this bad debt. And I finally got to the point to where now I had excess income. I don't have consumer debt weighing me down. I've increased my income over the years. I got an emergency fund in place. Now I have extra money. What do I need to go do? And I'm pretty simple. And so I looked around at people in my life and people that I've admired from far away who have built immense wealth throughout their careers, and all those guys owned real estate. And so I was like, okay, if it works for them, and it's been working literally since the beginning of time, I mean, go back and read the Bible, the guys who own land were wealthy. Like, it makes people wealthy. And so I just said, okay, I got to get into this. And I had a buddy of mine who got into real estate right when we got out of college, and he had started buying some rental properties, and we had kept in touch, good friends. And I told him I'm out of debt, and he said, well, it's time for you to buy real estate. And so he helped me get that first deal, which was a rental property in Greenville, South Carolina. Bought it for like 65 grand, put, I don't know, 15K of work into it. And I had my first rental, and I'll never forget like walking around with my chest bowed out. I thought I was the man, because now I had a rental property, and it was the first time in my life I'd ever bought anything that paid me back. And then from that point on, man, I was bit by the bug.
That's awesome. So you had a friend that you knew was in real estate that kind of helped you get your way going. But were there any other resources, anything else you read, any other communities? Like, how did you find out more about this? Or was it really just from this one person that was in your life that helped you get started?
Yeah, I didn't get into, all the different real estate communities. I didn't cling on to like these different, I don't even know if they were called influencers at the time, but I know all the guys now. I have the opportunity to speak with them at conferences, the Brandon Turners, the David Greens, the Bigger Pockets crew. Chad Carson lives right down the road from me, all these guys. I just, for whatever reason, I didn't spend a lot of time in those worlds at the time. From a real estate perspective, I think my drive initially came from, I wanted to get ahead. And I didn't necessarily know what that looked like at first. So I spent more time, I think, understanding finances in general. Believe it or not, one of the biggest influences early on for me was Dave Ramsey, which I agree with pretty much everything Dave Ramsey preaches except for debt with real estate. If you gave him true serum, I think he would tell you that debt with real estate is probably not a bad thing, but he can't say that or it'd mess up his entire message. And so for me, I was learning the principles of how to handle money. I knew you couldn't have high interest debt. I knew you needed to get an emergency fund saved. And then I knew you couldn't save your way to wealth once that's done. So many people in my neck of the woods, you hear save, 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 which they don't even hardly save anything. They go wasted on consumer items. But your dollar literally loses value while it's sitting in a savings account. And so I knew I had to go take excess money that I had and deploy it into something. And for me, the stock market's fine. I have buddies who did that, but I like to, I guess my personality, I like to have a little bit of control. I don't have control over Apple. I don't have control over Facebook, Microsoft. You can pick any of stock. But looking at my friend who was like, bro, you can go buy this thing. It's real ugly right now. That you can fix it up and make it pretty. And now it's going to be worth way more. The bank's going to loan you 80% of that new value. So all the money you use to buy it, you can actually recoup it, or at least a lot of it, or sometimes more than it, or you can sell it and make a profit. And that for me, it just clicked. And so to the short answer to to follow up my long answers, no, I think it was more my buddy that really gave me the nuts and bolts of how to do it, more so than the community. But just seeing what real estate does and knowing that you have to put your money somewhere if you're going to build wealth.
Yeah. And you had the mindset. Some people just keep repeating like the cycles that they've lived and that their parents have lived, but something in you sparked that curiosity, made you go after that. Cause I'm sure lots of people have real estate friends that do that, but they don't ever ask, how did you do that? Why did you do that? So that's amazing that you had that spark. And I agree with investing. I don't understand the stock market, but like real estate is tangible and you can control the results a lot more than you can control what happens in the stock market, which a lot of people like the stock market because they set it and forget it, but they have no control over it. One day they're rich and the next day they're not. With real estate, it's a lot easier to control that roller coaster.
Agreed, 100%. There's nothing wrong with liquidity at some point, but I'm all about stacking assets, real assets.
So Jaren, you mentioned Dave Ramsey and this boatload of debt that he had after graduating college. It is a barrier for a lot of people that are looking to get into real estate investing. Is that snowball effect something that you've done with you and your wife to get actually into investing?
For sure, 100%. We did literally the debt snowball method. And so we took our smallest, which at the time was my wife's engagement ring, 2,500. I'd leveraged it and we paid it off. And then we went to the next thing, which I think would have been the credit cards. There was like 15K of those. And then the truck, which we ended up selling and dropping that price. And then the student loans. And so we did exactly that, and I like to clarify because some people think if I have any consumer debt, and there's an argument about what consumer debt is. Somebody could argue with me today that a vehicle loan isn't consumer debt. I would argue that it is, but do you have to pay off a vehicle before you buy real estate? No, I don't have a vehicle note, and I don't plan on ever having a note for anything outside of real estate ever again in my life. But there's folks here who maybe have a little bit of consumer debt. Maybe they even have something like a student loan, but they're making $300,000 a year, or they're making 250 or 200 or even 150. And so there's this excess capital. There's just breathing room. I think, what I learned in my journey of paying off debt is it's not that you can't get into real estate with consumer debt. You just can't get into real estate with consumer debt if you don't have breathing room of capital coming in from somewhere. If you don't have income that's protecting you, then you're just setting yourself up for a disaster. And I always kind of poke people and say, all right, you aren't disciplined enough to manage your own personal finances. What makes you think that you have earned the right to manage a property that somebody else is going to live in? And so I think it's good to take a good hard look in the mirror and figure out how to create some discipline in your life.
Yeah. So talk to us, Jaren, about those early stages. What were you working? Were you actually working in real estate or were you doing something else?
No, my entire career, I've done sales to this day. I still do sales. I love it for a B2 job. And that's part of my message. Is I think a lot of folks think that you have to go into real estate full time, albeit a wholesaler, a full-time flipper, real estate agent, whatever the case may be. Listen, you do not have to do that. If you want to do that and that's your passion, go do it. But the way I teach real estate and the people that we attract are folks, guys and gals who work a job, but they also want to create wealth, future wealth, from the money that they earn from that job. Because that job's not going to make you wealthy. That job's going to create you income, but what you do with that income is going to dictate what your future looks like. And so work the job. Don't quit the job. That's the safety net. That is the engine that gives you the capital to then be able to go and free your future down the road. I'm going to go on a quick soapbox here. People, the retire early community, it's great because it teaches you how to manage money. It's bad because of a mindset. So many people live with this mindset of, I have to invest. I need to get ahead so that I can quit and not have to work. Listen, we were all made to work. You don't work, you're going to die like early. I mean, that's just statistically proven. And so I would encourage anybody who's listening to this podcast or any podcast, or you're trying to get ahead, don't do it for the reason of, I just don't want to work. If you hate your job, guess what? You can go find another job. But you were made to work. And so go into this. That was big for me when I first started, because I think I got into that mindset for a second. And then I was like, my wife would be like, what are you going to do? And I'm like, well, I don't know. And so we're all you need to do something. But I will say, what real estate allows you to do is choose what that something is. And so there may be a little bit of pain on the front end, but just know, if you'll dive into this asset and listen to what people like Nico and Anna are teaching, then down the road, you get to choose what those days look like. And it's pretty amazing.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say. That's the missing piece. It's like, you're not retiring early. You're just, now you have the freedom to choose what you do with your time.
Yes.
Instead. So you can go work a job like teaching. Maybe you love to teach, but you don't want to live on a teacher's salary. Well, now you can live on your rental income and still teach someone and pay it forward. And that fills your soul. So that's the part that I think I agree with completely. Like, you're just going to die on the vine if you're just sitting. You can only sit on your porch sipping a margarita or a beer for so long before it gets super boring.
You're probably going to become an alcoholic too and die even earlier.
Not only that, Jaren, right? So people that do have W-2s, you can use that as a technical for getting loans. I'm an agent, and I know as an agent, and getting traditional loans are a little bit harder if you're self-employed. So if you have a W-2, you can use that to, get yourself more bankable, right?
Man, the bankers' mouths water when I walk through the door. We're able to sit down on a W-2 with all this high income. They love it. They absolutely love it, and so it is super helpful when you're getting started. So change that mindset. If you're under that mindset of, man, I need to quit my job to do real estate, you don't. If you want to do real estate full time, like Nico, then great, go do it. But I don't think it needs to be your first jump. If you already have something stable that's producing you some good income, stay there, leverage it. And then as you move on, decide what you want to do.
Yeah. So talk to us, Jaren, about that first deal. Where did you find it? I know you leveraged a friend that was already doing it. Did he bring the deal to you, or how did you find your first deal? And what'd you end up doing?
So he actually was what we would call an investor friendly agent, probably like you guys, to where he worked with investors and brought them deals. He just happened to be a really, really good friend of mine. And so he essentially was like, bro, you got to get into the game. You've got your debt going. He's like, let's get you a deal. And so his firm brought me this prospective deal. He helped me walk through the deal from the analyzation standpoint. He helped me negotiate the deal, represented me in the deal because he was an agent. And so I bought it. It was nice having that person in your corner. I tell folks, you got to find people that you can surround yourself with who make real estate normal, because it's one of those things where it's kind of scary. It almost feels like a myth. It almost feels intangible if you haven't done it. And so you've got to put yourself around a community of people that it's normal. That is the way they talk. Right. And so I had that personally, which was a blessing. Not everybody does. Hence why we do what we do digitally with our brand, is being able to create that for people. More than anything we do, Nico, is I think we just try to make buying real estate normal. Like, I can teach the X's and O's, but how do we make it as normal as possible? So that's what he did for me. And so I bought the property, conventional type of financing. It was on a portfolio loan, DSCR loan, but it was 20% down. So I just put 20% down. I think the purchase price was 65. So what is that? 13 down, closing cost. I had 15,000 in the deal to get to the closing table. It was undervalued, needed some love. I think I put 15, 20,000 worth of work in it. So now I'm all in at what? $45,000 out of pocket, and a total of 85 all in. And I rented it out for, I think it started at $950. This was a while ago. I think it started at $950 and bumped its way up over time. And then I actually ended up selling it to a wholesaler. I'd never really done that before, but a wholesaler kept texting me about it. And I'd owned it a few years, and I just text back. I was like, 150K and you can have it. And he said 130. I said, we'll meet in the middle at 140. And he said, deal. So they went and looked at it, and they bought it. I think we closed 10 days later. And so I didn't do anything to it. And tenants had paid off my debt, a lot of my debt. And I sold it for 140K. I don't know. I ended up making, call it before taxes, a net 60, whatever it was. And I didn't even have to do anything to the property, other than when I first bought it, which is pretty cool.
Wow. What did you do with the proceeds from that point forward? And do you ever look back and be like, man, I wish I would have held on to that? Because I think Greenville has
Yeah.
become a hopping kind of place now.
Yeah. No, yeah. Every property I've ever sold, I said, man, I wish I wouldn't have sold that. I don't remember exactly what I did with it at the time. I knew at that time I went and bought another Airbnb around that same time by the coast. And so I think I probably put some of that into there, but that's not validated. I did not do a 1031 exchange. I can tell you that. So I paid taxes, but I'd owned it for over a year. So I was capped at long-term capital gains, because if you own a rental for a year or longer, you're capped at long-term capital gains instead of having to pay what your ordinary income would be, which for me would be 40% plus. Well, at the time, long-term capital gains was capped, I think, at 20%. So I only had to pay 20%, which still I hate paying the government anything. And then you work with a CPA to try to drop that down anymore, but that's a whole different topic. So
Jaren, you talked about your friend, right? Your friend who was an investor-friendly agent. And Anna and I like to think we're investor-friendly agents as well, but we're just curious because I know that was your first deal and you've done tons since. But what are you looking for in an investor-friendly agent, like as a partner? What kind of attributes are you looking for?
they really got to understand investing and understand the types of deals that I'm looking for. I think that's the biggest issue, is most of them, even if they call themselves that, they maybe aren't. They don't understand the investing game. And then they don't bring me the types of deals that I want. They may set you up. If you get an investor, if y'all do this, then edit this out. But if you get an investor friendly agent who just sets you up on an MLS notification and that's all they do, which just means you're going to get notifications anytime a new property gets listed in the area that you're looking at, and they don't do anything else, they're not really maybe doing their job for you. Now, that needs to be something they do for you, but they also, like, I want them looking for off-market deals. So I am usually partnering with some type of firm who they're running their own mailers. They've got their own cold callers in-house, and they're getting deals and bringing them to their investors. It's almost like a wholesale outfit, but it's not a wholesale outfit, because they're representing you as an agent instead of selling the contract to others. Very similar. They're just not quite the bottom feeders like wholesalers are, in my opinion. So I love you, wholesalers. But that's essentially what I'm looking for is, hey, just keep filling me up with properties. And then I would say the second thing, especially if you're an out-of-state investor or you're new to investing, is they need to have a strong network, especially when it comes to contractors. You can find for us, it's a closing attorney. Other parts of the country, it's a title company, whatever the case may be. But they need to have a strong network of contractors, have that property manager, closing attorneys, things of those nature.
Yeah. Miko and I have talked a little bit about that in the past, about like asking some simple questions to an agent when you're vetting them. Like, I just did a training. Miko knows this. And I had a room of agents and they were like, how many of you have worked with investors? And several raised their hand. I'm like, okay, how many of you know what a buy box is? And they were like, and it's like little simple things like that. Like, buy box is simple jargon that I think a basic investor will learn when they're first starting out. And if an agent can't even explain to you what a buy box is, or if they've never owned a rental property themselves, then that may be a red flag, because you said their network, but their network matters too, because they may have a lender, but that doesn't mean it's an investor friendly lender that understands the different types of loan products, or a title company that understands closing certain kinds of ways, because you're buying something as a seller finance or you're doing some creative stuff. So I will say asking simple questions like that is also super helpful, because you could find an agent that has a really great network, but it still may not be the exact right network you need as an investor.
That's a really
my 2
good
cents.
point. Yes, that's a great point. Yeah, they're almost like that. They're like that point man who, points you to everybody that you need, and good contacts, not just any contact, 100%.
Yeah. And that comes with time, right? And I know you and I have been investing in for 3 years. So maybe an agent that's actually investing themselves, because they're in the trenches. They understand what it is to be a landlord. They understand what, a fix and flip margins look like in our market. So understanding all that would be very important. So if there's any agents that are, interested in learning about that, definitely reach out to Anna and I. I don't want to go on a tangent on that, but I did want to talk about, how you did construction on your first property, right? Did you have any experience on, fixing up homes at that time?
No, none at all. And I didn't do it myself. I never do it myself. Just to be clear, I hire it out. And no, that's the hardest part of real estate investing, is managing contractors. It just is what it is. It's it's very hard. It's if for the reward that real estate brings, there's going to be some friction somewhere. Anything in life that brings pleasure, reward, there's got to be an equal amount of pain. And so for me, the deal finding is easy. I love deal finding. I love negotiating. Everybody's different. So some people won't like that part. But for me, that's the easy part. Like if that was all real estate was, I mean, I'd be a billionaire, right? But we have not really. But we have the construction part, which is having to manage contractors. And I did not have experience with that. And so I learned very quickly that people tell you they're going to be here this day and they're not. And well, we promise we're coming the next day. They're not there the next day, and it's just on and on and on and on. And so you learn how to manage that process. And I think it is one of those things to where you can teach it as much as you want, but until you experience it yourself, you don't comprehend what all goes into managing a project. And so, I was able to build out a lot of systems through that. I also was able to be smart enough to partner with project managers on a lot of my deals moving forward. People that I trusted who were high level folks who would manage the subs for me. And when I got to that point and you find that right partner, and they can even become an equity partner, real estate investing becomes even easier. And it's one of those things to where, hey, have I lost a little bit of money on paper because some of my equity, or I'm paying a project manager more to do it? 100%. But I guarantee you I would have lost more by not doing that because of the time it would have taken on projects and the things that would have coming up over
And so many questions now. I'm not even sure if Nico wanted to go in this direction, but here we go. Because I'm in the trenches as one of those that has the buildings under construction, and it's a pain in the ass to get and the cats herded. So my first question is you mentioned a project manager. Can you explain to those that may not fully understand what that role is? How do you define that role? What are their core duties, and what are key, 2 or 3 key attributes that you look for when you're trying to find one? And maybe where do you find one? Who is that?
If I forget one of those, just reel me back in. But I like this project manager, they're going to manage literally the entire project for you. And so you're going to sit down with them. Y'all are going to work together to come up with a scope of work. So, hey, it's going to depend on what type of property it is. That's why it's real estate stuff to be black and white, because if it's a rental property, we're going to do something totally different than if it's a fix and flip, right? So there's things that we're going to have to fix on a fix and flip because we're going to sell it on the back end. It's got to pass inspection. Rental property, we don't have to do all that, right? So you're going to sit down with that project manager. You're going to tell them, okay, here's what I'm doing with this property. Then you guys are going to work together to put a game plan of, all right, now what are we going to do? What are we doing with the kitchen? What are we doing with the flooring? What are we doing with the bathrooms? What is our paint color? Do we have any big capital expenditures? Is there foundation issues? Is there plumbing issues? Is there electrical issues? Is there roof issues? All right. So then you're going to get all that planned out. And then you're going to work on what is that price going to be. So we're going to come up with an idea of, hey, this is what our quote is. This is what we think it's going to be. And it's never going to be exact. I would recommend putting 10 to 20% contingency price in when you are getting quotes from contractors or different project managers. And so then once the project starts, they're going to run point on everything. And so this is going to keep you from having to be there every day, having to schedule the painter, having to schedule the flooring guys, having to schedule anybody. They're going to do all that. And then what I recommend is a once a week checkup with this project manager. If you're far away, video walkthrough, they can either do it live or they can send it to you. If you're local, you can stop by and see it if you'd like. Hop on a phone call with them. Hey, where are we at? Are we on pace? Make sure they're validating everything that's been done from a pay perspective. And this is just a disclaimer. Do not pay large lump sums. You pay them as the project goes. You will get burned. They'll say that the project's going to cost $50,000. And they're saying, hey, we need a $25,000, 50% deposit up front. Say, no, thanks, man. Appreciate it. And you go find another contractor as fast as you can. Don't even think twice about it. Just go find another contractor as fast as you can. How do you find these guys? It's going to come from networking. That's why I think an investor-friendly agent is so important, because they're going to be able to point you in that right direction. Also, doing your own networking outside of the investor-friendly agent, just in the real estate community that you're investing in. If it's locally, going to local meetups, taking other investors to lunch, talking with property managers, seeing who they use, because they have a list of contractors who they use. And then over time, this is just a crap answer, but you just run into people in the real estate world. I mean, it is what it is. And you will find people that you are compatible with and that work good with. And you'll go through different ones of them. You're going to go through different subs. You're going to go through different project managers. But the key is having somebody you ask, what do they need to have? What traits? They need to be honest. And then number 2, they need to be a pain in the butt. My guys, so I'm partners now, like equity partners. We're all in a company called Dad's Flipping Houses with the with the guys who used to manage my projects. They're high level dudes. One of them, he goes to church with me, a great guy. He's just a pain in the tail, and I hope he listens to this in the best way possible. Everything has to be perfect. I am not like that. I just am buying the next deal. Once I close, I tell somebody the other day, I don't really know if I like real estate, because once I actually own it, I don't care to ever see it again. I just want to go find the next deal. I'm a big deal junkie. He's diving in and he's seeing every little detail. And I think that's important for a project manager. He's okay with having those confrontational conversations every day if he's got to. He'll show up, and if it's not right, bro, they're ripping it out. They're going to do it again, and they're going to pay for it. And he's going to argue with them till it's done. And so having that person in your corner who's going to do the right thing, they're going to tell you the truth, and then they're going to hold people accountable while they're doing it. And if you can find that person on your team, and these guys, I used to just pay them to do it. And then we were like, hey, we're competing. I beat him on a deal, and we were laughing about it at church one day. And I was like, bro, why don't we just all join up? And he was like, well, let me talk with Matt, which was his other partner. And then we all went to dinner, and we were like, let's do it. So now we just buy houses, a bunch of houses together, and I'd find them, and they find them too. So let me make that clear. But then they do a great job managing them on the back end. It's pretty cool.
Yeah.
Okay.
That was a lot. Sorry.
No, that was good. You answered all the questions and it was perfect. I was like, I need a project manager. My husband would make the perfect project manager, but he still works at W-2. So I need to find a copy of him.
Yep. Yes. And it's a battle. It really is. There's a lot of sifting through. Very few times will you find that person on the first go around, for whatever reason. Same thing's true like in my Airbnb space. On Airbnbs, among the cleaners, I've gone through 5 cleaners. I finally have one that does a good job. It's just that type of industry.
Yeah. And I think that's the discouraging part, which is part of the reason we started this podcast, because we are newer investors going through the beginning phases. And I think a lot of times when we hear people that have been through it, done it 20 years, super successful, it almost seems daunting and intimidating. Like, oh, they found their person on the first try, which is not true.
No.
We know that. But like, it's very easy to get lost in the people that are 20 chapters ahead versus like our story where like, I'm going through this now. And it's discouraging because you're like, man, we've been through like 2 and they both have failed, but it may take 5, it may take 6, it may take 10. Like, it's not something that you're going to find on the first shot. And probably many of us as investors haven't found them on the first shot, even though we think that, Brandon Turner probably did, but he probably didn't.
Yeah, no, he definitely did. And analyzation, not to go down this rabbit trail because I don't want to steer this the wrong way, but I will just put this plug. Analyzing is so important when it comes to analyzing deals and making sure that you're buying very, very conservatively. Because if you buy conservatively, especially early on, until you understand what your costs are going to be, I can go up to a property now and I know almost exactly what our costs are going to be. And so I don't have to play by the 70% rule on every property. But if I was I'm finding the ARV. Let's just talk about for a flip. What is the ARV of this property going to be? It's going to be worth this after I buy it. I'm going to multiply that by 70%. Okay, that's the 70% rule to get it at a discount. Subtract my expected rehab costs, and I'm going to put in a 10 to 20% buffer on that rehab cost that it's going to cost 10 to 20% more, and that's what I'm buying the property at. If I'd never done this before, because that 70% rule gives you a lot of leeway, and I can go buy them at way less margins nowadays because I know exactly what I'm going to pay. But until you know that, do not go buying skinny deals when you're first starting. You will get burned. That's just all there is to it. You're absolutely going to get burned. And then, I'll say this on project management. If you're keeping a property as a rental, I use property managers for all of my properties. Let them manage the rehab. Like all of my properties up until now when I partner with these dudes, but in the past that I kept as rentals, my property management did all my rehab on my rentals because they had the contractors. I pay them a fee to manage it, and they know exactly how much to spend to get the highest amount of rent. Where I may overspend, they know, hey, it needs to be in this condition to get the highest amount for this particular area. So that's a little hack.
We'll have to have you come back because now I'm like, wait, how do you find it? Because I've been through property managers too. I'm going through all of the things that every investor could possibly be like, damn, I don't want to be an investor. But I know the long game. So we'll definitely have to have you back, and I'll let Nico like re-steer the ship because I'm like,
I love it.
Good point. We'll definitely have Jaren come back. But I wanted to talk about, you talked from 0 to 1, which is the hardest part of getting, your first property. But I know I believe the following year you just scaled it a ton. You mind talking about, that time of your life and how that looked? I know you focus on the BRRRR method, which is really nice in your area, but yeah, how did that look and how were you finding those deals?
It was fun. So I bought 2 in 2018. I believe it was 2. It was either 2 or 3. I'm pretty sure it was 2. I probably need to nail that down. Either way, the point was we'll go with 2. I bought 2 using my own money, 20% down, and I fixed it up with my own capital. Well, then I was pretty much out of capital. right? I was going to make more in my job, but I didn't have any more to buy at the time. But I was really excited because I'd had two. And I was like, okay, this is amazing. These are going to change my life eventually, but how do I go buy more? And so I realized I was going to have to go buy with other people's money. I don't remember like exactly the combo, but I remember talking with my buddy who got me in Gaston, and he was telling me about deals they had done. And they were doing this on like, they started with houses, but this strategy I'm teaching, it's got a cool name to it now. We didn't know the name then. This is what everybody does on every level of real estate, whether it be one house, small multifamily, large apartments, commercial, and they may do it immediately, the refi, which I'm going to talk about, or they may do it after 2 to 5 years. But this is the real estate strategy. It's just a matter of how quick do you get your capital back. And so Gaston was telling me, yeah, man, we bought this deal. We bought it at such a big discount and we fixed it up with a little bit. And then we went to the bank and we told them we want to do a cash out refi, and it appraised for so much. They gave us 80% of that new appraised value in a form of a check. They went and cashed it in their bank account, and they were able to pay back all the money they used to buy it and fix it up. And now they owned a property without having any of their money left in it. And I don't remember where I was when we were talking about probably driving down the road. I was like, hey, hold up. So you're telling me if I can get a property at a big enough discount, I can buy it with cash or my HELOC or a 401k or a private money lender or a hard money lender. Okay. It doesn't matter where I get the money. Nope. Doesn't matter. Okay. Then you can go and buy it if it's at a big enough discount, fix it up a little bit, make it worth X amount more, and then pull all that money out, but still keep the property. And he's like, yeah. I was like, bro, that's a freaking game changer. And so I committed myself to that strategy in 2019 into 2020. And we went from 2 properties in 2018 to we were at 22 properties at the end or the middle of 2019. And so we scaled 19 or 20 more properties in a very short amount of time because I went and deployed that strategy. And so it was a lot of fun. It was a lot of work, but it was worth it because being able to scale that quickly and then just let them sit over the years, compound interest has done its thing. And so I know people are thinking, okay, well, man, how'd you fund those things? All right. I know that's the question is, well, multiple ways. So one of the ways we did it was with private lenders. So that's friends, family, coworkers, acquaintances, other investors. And it's going to take a little time to build those relationships, but all you need is one person. I don't know if y'all have had Coach Chad Carson on, but me and him were talking. He's either on a podcast or we were at a show together. And he's like, dude, me and my partner had one guy that lent us to get started. Just one for their entire career.
Dr. Stone.
Yes. Yeah. And that's all you need is one person to get in your corner and say, hey, I trust that you're finding these deals undervalued. And there's a whole lesson we could teach on that about how to present that to people. But we did it that way. I did it through a little bit of hard money, not a ton of hard money lenders at the time. It was more private money. We used HELOCs. So I took a line of credit off my personal home to use that capital. And then we used cash. And then I would use equity partners as well, where I'd bring a partner in. They'd be the capital partner. Okay, so they bring all the money. I would find the deal. And instead of them being a lender, they would have equity in that deal after the refi or if we sold it as a flip. And so I just got creative. My motto is this to this day, and it really was early on when I was doing that. And then today, we don't really have a problem getting capital anymore just because I'm so visible. But I wasn't always visible. Like I didn't have a brand. And it was just, Jaren's doing some real estate. I don't remember what I was going to say.
The power of money.
Edit that out. What was I saying?
You were talking about like your brand and getting money but you didn't have a brand at the time.
Yeah. And so the thing that I learned, I didn't have a brand. I didn't have any of this. And so my thing was, okay, I just need to go find as many deals as I possibly can. If I can go find deals, then I can find something to do with them. And I think that should be everybody's MO that's listening to this. Go find as many deals as possible and then figure out what to do with them. Sell the contract. You can wholesale them, flip them, keep them as a rental. If they don't make sense as BRRRRs are harder to do, which I've done 2 this year, so I don't want to hear it, but I will, fine. If we want to say the rates are higher and they're harder to do, fine, whine about it. Don't BRRRR them, flip it. If you can BRRRR it, you can flip it, okay? If you could have BRRRRed it, but interest rates are screwing you, go flip it and make money. Just go find deals. And if you keep deal flow coming in, then you're going to always have a career in real estate investing.
Yeah. That's a good mantra is go find the deals, because if it's a good deal, you will find a way to fund it.
But yeah.
How are you finding these deals? I'm sure people who are listening to this are like, yeah, that sounds great, right? But how would you recommend people that are starting out or are just interested in finding finding good deals?
Yep. So we do it a couple ways, and we keep it pretty darn simple. Investor-friendly agents, wholesalers. We're on wholesalers list. I drive around. So I literally get in my car. I will do it today. I think it's on the schedule to do it Thursday. And I will pick an area and I'll drive. And I use an app. I'll tell you all that. I use an app called Land Glide. It's like $10 a month. And when I drive by a house, I'll just screenshot the address on Land Glide. And I'll do this for, call it 30 houses that I find while I'm out on my little hour ride, drinking my little QT soft drink that I shouldn't be drinking. It's going to give me diabetes one day. And then I do that for about an hour. And then I go and I use Deal Machine when I sit back down at my computer. And Deal Machine usually has all the contact info. And I'll sit there and I'll call it the 20 to 30 houses. If they don't answer, I'll shoot them a text. And then I use an app called Asana. You literally use your Apple calendar if you didn't want to be as fancy as me. So, and I type that address in, address blank, called on blank, didn't answer, and then I schedule a date for Asana to notify me to call them again. Then through Deal Machine, I click Start Mail because you can start sending them mailers. It costs me 62 cents per house. Set it to send every 45 days. And so I do that literally every single week. And it's realistically, it takes 2 to 3 hours of my time every single week. Okay. I'm driving for an hour, come back to the office, do all the admin stuff with it, keep it moving every day. And then outside of that, we send mailers, which I didn't start doing this till later in my real estate investing career, to where it's not like what I do with driving for dollars is very targeted. I'm looking for distressed properties when I'm driving around that potentially look vacant. But then we also send out mass mailers. So I know certain neighborhoods that I'm looking to attack. And so on Deal Machine, I can literally draw a circle around it and I'll send mailers to particular types of owners. So like, for example, I really love out of state LLC owners. It's just, I do good with those. And there's a whole list of people that we'll send mailers to. And then Zillow, I get on Zillow about 3 times a week. Just look. I got my license years ago, literally, so that I can open super key boxes and not have to call an agent to let me into a house. So I don't even represent us when we sell on the back end from flips. I don't represent anybody. I did 90 hours worth of agent work so I can get into houses. So I'll go look at those houses and then word of mouth. I don't even ask for deals on my big account hardly ever. I'm pretty much just on Jaren's personal Facebook that just the people in his town know from growing up. I will post once a month, hey, we need some more flips. And then people will send us leads and we give them a strong referral. And so that's how we do deals. I don't sit and cold call for 40 hours a week. Personally, I partner with investor-friendly agents and wholesalers who do that for me.
Mm-hmm. So if you know Jaren, he has a ton going on and he's still sending out postcards, driving for dollars. I just found my deal from driving for dollars. So I'm all about that. So those of you listening, no excuses, right?
Dude, I wrote 2 handwritten letters. Literally, I think it was Friday before I left the office. I got my labels are sitting right here. I had my stamps over there and put them in the mailbox on the way out because there's a lady I talked to on the phone who had told me no. So somebody tells me no on the phone, right? I'll usually follow up with a handwritten letter. Just say, hey, thank you just for answering my call. I really appreciate it. I'm going to keep in touch every 6 months. If anything changes, let me know. Nobody else is doing that. And, then I'll holler at her 6 months later. And yeah, I'm busy. None of y'all, if anybody whines about being busy, you're lying to yourself. I got 4 kids, 8, 6, 4, and 2. I coach all their sports teams. We're involved at church. I got 75 different businesses. I'd still do sales. Like, I don't want to hear it. You got time. All right. Make the time.
Yeah. And you're jumping in the car twice a week to drive around for an hour to look at properties.
Yes. I love it.
No,
it's
no Netflix for you.
No. And although I'm into the NASCAR show on Netflix. Anyways, you guys, what was I going to say? Oh, there is a lot of folks who whine about their market being too expensive. I want to push back on everybody who said, I used to give in. And I used to say, yeah, you're probably right. And then I started studying some different markets. Don't let that be a crutch. Your market is probably too expensive to do a flip, to buy a rental or do a BRRRR. But I would argue that in every market in the United States, you can flip and make a lot of money. That's my argument. And so for all y'all who can't make it work where you live, I will wave the white flag and say, you're right. You're not going to BRRRR in DC. All right, that's fine. You're right. You may not even be able to do a long-term rental in DC unless you're buying bigger commercial stuff. You can go flip and you can go find vacant homes right outside of any city and you can go make money. And so I want to encourage y'all. Yes, you want to get to the rental game eventually because that's going to build long-term wealth, but you can I make a lot of freaking money every year flipping. And I don't want people to sleep on flipping, especially if it's doable in their market.
Spot on. I mean, I did do a BRRRR here locally in Maryland, but it is hard to find, with the interest rates that change. So I just like what you said, I'm switching, or I'm looking at all properties in different ways and having different exit strategies, but flipping is, there's a lot of distressed properties here in our area. So you gotta find them and be flexible with which way you want to go. Right.
Yeah. And I like the concept of like getting ahead of the curve before they go on the market, because that's been our struggle. I fully admit, no, I haven't been driving for dollars or postcards, but as soon as those come on the market, little fish like me feel like we have no chance. We get outbid by all the investors that have the teams already that can have smaller margins. So doing the off market deal finding is really probably the biggest key to a market like ours.
Agreed. No doubt. I would say it's especially right now. There's a lot more people who are investing in real estate that I've noticed in the last few years, and so those on market deals and people are buying them at dumb prices. I know maybe they can make if they're their own DIY guy, but I'm seeing some of these deals. I'm like, man, y'all are just paying too much money for them. And one more plug I'll give, and this is going to be for people who, maybe have a little bit more of a construction background or have access to those people, because I don't necessarily recommend this for brand new investors, but we are building a lot right now. And there's more that goes into it. You got to understand zoning. You got to understand like how many times can you cut up a lot? There's lots of different things, but that's literally a call to your planning and zoning center. So I don't want to hear it. You can pick up the phone and call them and they'll tell you. But we're doing very, very well on the lots and building fronts too right now. So that's always a great way. And you can get real creative with how you finance those too. A lot of people will potentially do some seller financing and things. And I'm not talking about subdivisions. I'm not the guy to teach you how to build a subdivision. I'm talking about, let's go buy a half-acre lot or acre lot and, put a stick-built house on it. We're doing pretty good there. We're about to start a barn dominium. I'm gonna try to put that one on YouTube.
Nice.
Cool. So anyways, there's a lot of ways that you guys can make money out there in real estate.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You just channeled my next question. So I know you've built your presence online with, the Finance Cowboy brand. And we talked about, being credible for your private money lenders and things like that. What brought you to initially like sharing your story online, and how has that benefited you in the real estate space?
So there's two reasons. All right. So I got to tell the truth. I'll tell the jerk reason first. No, I'll tell the politically correct answer first. The politically correct answer first, and I mean this, I really do. But there's also the angel and the devil. I'm a competitive person. So the real answer is I had Gaston, my friend, in my corner, and I knew I wouldn't be where I was today in real estate if it wasn't for him. And it wasn't like he went and helped me do every deal after that. It was just he made it normal for me. He normalized it. And so I was like, okay, I'm a pretty normal dude, a very normal dude. I think I can get that to portray in my content, and hopefully I can inspire people to be like, okay, well, I got a family, I got kids, I live in Podunk, wherever, I can go do this too. The other reason is the people closest to you in your life usually won't listen to your advice. So you got to just learn that. Like my family and friends, they're the ones who I'll try to get them in. They don't listen. So I don't even try anymore. There's a close friend of mine who I have been trying to get invest in real estate for years. And this is a high level person, makes a lot of money, very prestigious position, and just kind of blew me off. Jaren's kind of, he didn't say this, but I know he's thinking Jaren's a little rough around the edges, a little blue collar for me. I'm a little more white collar. I'm not going to listen to what he has to say. And so next thing I know, he starts preaching to me about index fund investing, which I got nothing against index funds. I have some liquidity in index funds. That's fine. But he starts preaching it to me, like kind of coming at me, like, you need to buy index funds. This is what you need to do. I'm like, where's this coming from? Well, then he starts sending me these posts on Instagram from this dude. I'm not going to say his name. He's not as prominent on Instagram anymore. I met him and he just kind of got lazy with it. But he was like 5 years younger than me. Was only worth, I say only, this is very good. So I'm going to sound like a jerk this whole story. So hang with me. But he's only worth at the time like $300,000. And at the time I was like, bro, I'm worth like $2 million. And what I'm doing is working here. Yet you're over here sending me this guy's post telling me I need to do this. And so it kind of pissed me off. I was like, well, this clown can get on Instagram and convince my highly educated friend to do this, then I need to get on there and convince these people that they need to do this, because this is what's really working. And so a little bit of competitive spirit came out of me. And, it just kind of, I posted, I know it was July of 21. And, I didn't have it's so embarrassing starting an account when you don't have any followers, because it's just like you go to the gym and like one of your buddies will have seen it and you've got like 500 followers and you're posting this stuff. You're like, God, this is awful. But finally, I showed up every day, like 1 or 2 posts a day for 6 months. And 6 months in, I had one post go viral. And so I went from like 4,000 followers to 50,000 followers. And I was like, okay, I got a little bit of like social cred now. Then I got lazy for a long time because the income from our business didn't really come from social media. Now I'm back on it. So anyways, but I love getting to help people. I really do. Like I post, it's very hard for me because the way you have to grab people's attention on social media is being semi douchey sometimes. And so I'll have to post this content that's like, I'm 30 years old and we're worth this amount of money. And literally as I type it, or if it's somebody on our team is typing it and I read it, like it hurts me. But if I go and I just post tactical stuff that doesn't grab their attention with that, it's like nobody sees it. And so I have to play the little bit of the game, which just I would clown me. I want to roast me for doing, but that's the only way I can grab people's attention to change their lives. And we've been able to change hundreds of people's lives. Our community bought, I think it was ended up being like 13 to 15 million in real estate last year. And we're on pace to beat that this year. And it's cool to hear the stories. So I'm glad I did.
Yeah, that's pretty amazing. Sometimes you just need a hook to reel them in. It's just like fishing, right? You
Yeah.
just need something shiny to reel them in. And then once you got them there, then you can like educate them because many have probably never heard of what you're talking about. And then they're like, oh, wait a minute, that's different. And then you keep coming back. So I get it. It's cringy, but it's for a good cause.
Correct. Yeah. So forgive me if you ever see my content and just like, oh, that guy said, I feel the same way. I promise.
Now we could definitely move on, but we are getting close on time, Jared. So we always like to ask a few final questions before we let you go. I know you've been in the business since 2018. What is the biggest lesson and what is some advice you would give a younger self?
It would be to always make trust the thing that you lead with in these business relationships. Make sure you trust the other person. If it's too good to be true, it's too good to be true. You can get yourself in trouble. You get so excited about a deal that you have the wrong partners on it, whether that's from a financial perspective or from a contractor perspective. And everything's built on trust. So you just want to make sure you're doing good business with good people. And then when you start doing this and you get into a flow like we did to where we started doing a lot of properties, it's going to change your life financially. And what you have to remember is there's enough money for everybody to go around. And if you start being greedy, if you start doing people wrong, if you start telling little fibs to help yourself more, you're a crap person. And I hope it comes back to get you. And if it doesn't come back to get you, just know when you go to bed at night, you're still a crap person and you don't need to act like that. You always tell the truth, always do the right thing, help as many other people as you possibly can, because there's enough love for everybody to go around. So do people right and make sure you partner with people who are going to do you right.
I love that.
Yeah, I will say too, the investor community is big, but not really. And aside from being a crap person, it will get around because you know somebody that knows somebody that knows you. It'll come back eventually, and you'll get that name in the investor community, and you're shooting yourself in the foot for a short-term game.
I love that. All you got is your name. As soon as that reputation's done, you're done. 45 games or whatever it is. And so I literally spent my entire childhood, my entire identity, everything I did was baseball every day. I mean, I'd work out in the morning, go to school, and then it was at the batting cages or practice. And so I literally became numb to failing. And I just knew that if I failed today, okay, whatever, we wake up tomorrow and we try again. And I think it does something to you, especially in your developmental years when you're playing this sport that just continues to obliterate you mentally. And if you don't learn how to handle it, then you're literally going to crumble. And so I believe that playing ball, and I'm talking baseball specifically, there's so many lessons that athletics in general teach it. But I was able to learn how to just be numb to things going bad. And so now when things go bad in my life, if I fail at a business or fail at an event or don't get a deal, I could have done something differently. Yeah, it pisses me off for a second, but then I just regroup and go to the next day. And sometimes it could be a downfall because I've lost some money before and it's just like, whatever, I know what not to do next time. But I think that's more helpful than hurtful in the long run.
And there's always a lesson to be learned in every failure.
100%.
And our last question that we always like to ask our guests is, how can Anna and our audience, help you in your business in the future?
I would say supporting us on social media would be awesome. Just follow me at Finance Cowboy, YouTube, Instagram. We're going to teach you some stuff. You just hang around long enough. And then share what I send with people who need to hear it. That's my biggest ask, is I try to make content we have to do different types of content to reach different people. Sometimes I'm trying to reach people who are already in real estate. And then other times I'm trying to, really reach out to those who aren't yet. And so if you ever see anything I post that can inspire somebody, just share it and let's help as many people as possible change their life through this great asset. Thank you.
And so follow Jaren, Finance Cowboy. It's a great account. I learned, you hooked me in with one of those posts back in the days, and now we work together and we're friends. So it's great. And thank you again for coming on. So that's gonna do it for another episode of the Agent to Investor podcast. You can reach out to me and Garcia official on all social platforms, Nico Garcia, and you can reach out to Anna at.
I'm Anna by _realtor, mostly on Instagram, or Anna by everywhere else.
Awesome. Until the next episode, guys. Thank you.
And we're done.